Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale, Arizona. And at this time, we present our weigh-in for our big night of action. Dr. Mike Warshawski, 182.5 pounds. And Chris Avila weighs in at 183.25 pounds.
I'm used to saving lives, and now I have to do damage inside that ring.
He acting nice, but he ain't nice. He's trying to fuck me up tomorrow. Fuck this little bitch. He's a bitch.
He's an NFL great, Le'Veon Bell, 197.5. Uriah Hall weighs in at 198.5. Antonio Nieves, 117.75 pounds. Alejandro Santiago weighs in at 118 pounds. And Braulio Rodriguez weighs in at 132.5 pounds. And Ashton H.D.O. Silva weighs in at 132.5 pounds.
Hard work makes easy work. Now it's time for the easy work.
It's the bout you've all been waiting for, the main event. Here's the MMA legend, Anderson Silva, 186 pounds. Here is the renowned content creator, the popular social media superstar and serial risk-taker, Jake Paul. 186.5 pounds for Jake Paul.
Tomorrow, I go doing my best for make a good show for everyone.
It's my generation. It's my time. It's been nice, nice, nice. It's been sweet, sweet, sweet. And tomorrow, guess what, Ariel? I'm fucking him up. I'm fucking him up.
George, what a scene up there.
A lot of spectacular thing happening in that ring.
Saturday night, just about all right for fighting. And tonight, a main attraction from the Valley of the Sun that you just can't miss. Welcome on in to Showtime pay-per-view countdown preliminary show ahead of tonight's Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva. Super fight in a curious sort of way, but let's get into it ahead of here. Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas, the co-host of the Showtime award-winning digital series Morning Combat. And Luke, we have been front and back every minute of this fight week, covering it from all angles, as unique a setup as possible, with an MMA legend in Anderson Silva, a neophyte influencer boxer who's not going away in 5-0, Jake Paul. It's finally fight night. How are you feeling?
Ready to get it over with. Ready to find out. There's so many unknowns in a fight like this. I've had friends hit me up, be like, who do you think's going to win? And I tried to explain to them, when we have a fight where it's a sort of a normal title holder against the #1 contender, the variables are a little bit easier to measure because they're much more known. Here we don't really know the variables all that well. How much has Jake improved since the second Woodley fight? At 47 years old, what kind of durability does a guy like Anderson Silva have? We really just don't have any good answers to these questions. So for all the hype, which has been fun, for all of the horses that have been on set with us, that's been fun. But I'm ready to find out actually what the truth of this whole matter is. We're going to get that in a matter of hours.
It's what we don't know about this spectacular event that makes us so interested in finding out those answers. What we do know is it's an 8-round bout, be contested at a catch weight of 187 pounds. And for 5-0 Jake Paul, the 25-year-old, his toughest test to date, coming in without question from the size standpoint, from the experience standpoint. This is not just an MMA legend, of course, which Anderson Silva is. This is a fighter who, in his combat twilight here, has been ageless, has adjusted to pro boxing, and has made a bit of noise of his own to get people fired up for this event. We'll be with you up until the start of the pay-per-view card, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. You can get ahead of things right now and order Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva by going to showtime.com/PPV. But we're going to have some fun setting the stage for you. We've got 3 exciting fights right around the corner to sort of set your palate. But Luke, when we say this is unquestionably Jake Paul's toughest test to date in the main event, stylistically, separate from necessarily age or accomplishments, stylistically, what are we looking for and what Jake Paul has to deal with in Anderson Silva?
As our colleague over at USA Today, MMA Junkie, Dennis Segura, pointed out, Anderson Silva is unlike any opponent Jake has ever had for a wide variety of reasons, one of which is he can punch in combination. That's really not been a threat he's had to deal with up to this point. But more than that, what does Anderson Silva possess? Now, we're talking about a 47-year-old Anderson Silva, so we have to dial back some of the hyperbole that may have accompanied him during his prime. But what we have seen, at least in the Chavez Jr. fight and some other ones as well, he is elusive for the most part. He has obviously good setups. He can fight from both stances when he needs to. He is rangy. He is actually, it seems like he is durable, although that part is somewhat in question as well. But we're just talking about a guy who's got good timing, off rhythm at times. He can split your timing. Again, good manager of range and distance, creative striker, right? And of course, here's the big key for me, BC, in thinking about this fight. What's one thing that I think Anderson Silva, at least in theory, could do to give Jake Paul problems, it's to make him miss and then counter during that. His fights with Woodley, it was one goes, then the other goes, then it was one go, then the other goes. This one, it seems like everything could get mixed up in that little sharper mid-range region. We'll have to see if Anderson Silva can pull it off.
Absolutely, and when you look at Jake Paul, 25 years old, but a big kid, just shy of 6'2". He's got 4 knockouts in 5 appearances, but what he showed just late last year in Florida against Tyron Woodley in their immediate rematch, that one-punch power, that youth, which is why the betting odds for this one, Luke, have been all over the place. Jake opening as a favorite, flip-flopping even during fight week. Of ageless wonder and accomplishment, but particularly in the fight, it's going to be up to Jake to use that youth to his advantage. Nobody rushes Anderson Silva and goes unscathed. He has a way of luring you into his spider web, play on words there, and landing clean counter shots. The one-punch knockout of Tito Ortiz was an indication of that. But when he went to Mexico, as you mentioned, and upset Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., this wasn't a one-shot situation. This was somebody who's got the nuances down. He had his first pro boxing match in the 1990s, so he's always been around the sport. So for Jake Paul to inflict that youth, it's going to have to be about setting a pace, gaining his respect early by landing the big shots. But the key question here, and really for both of them, considering Silva's age, is if this fight goes into the second half, into round 6, 7, and 8, who has the edge? Who has the edge in stamina? It's going to depend on what type of fight it is leading up to that.
Absolutely. And the other part here is, while I think Jake will probably have great stamina, given he's been training very hard and has had several camps kind of fall through, so he's always been in the gym this whole time, the reality is, if you look at the tape in the first and second Woodley fight, and I did a whole breakdown on this on our Morning Combat YouTube channel, what you notice is right around the midway point of both fights, some of the technical, what do you want to say, not even sophistication, but just discipline, it begins to fall apart for Jake, which is common for guys who are a little bit newer to the game. They don't have that same kind of muscle memory built in from years and years of that. If Anderson Silva doesn't get polished off in the first half of that fight, I do expect him to mount a really good offense in the second one. How does Jake deal with that? I do not know.
Well, we'll have a lot more Jake Paul, Anderson Silva talk as we get closer to tonight's pay-per-view start, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. on the West Coast. Coming up next, the first of our trio of Showtime pay-per-view countdown preliminary fights. We're going to start in the super bantamweight division. Got a nice local prospect here, an unbeaten guy, Danny Barrios Flores from here in Glendale, Arizona. Desert Diamond Arena is our fallback here for this big event. And he'll be taking on Edgar Ortiz Jr. 8-3-2 Ortiz, the unbeaten Flores 10-0. This should be a fun scrap to kick things off.
Yeah, Ortiz in the pre-fight meetings told us he loves to do body work. And Carita, who of course is Flores, has been dying for an opportunity to compete on a card like this. He told us he was grateful for this opportunity.
Trunks are good.
Let's
here.
see what he can
Trunks
do.
Are good here. Touch him up, give him hell to bell.
8 rounds in the 122-pound division will get us going. 6 rounds in our opener here. You see Danny Barrios Flores in the blue trunks with the blue gloves. 10-0, 2 knockouts coming into this fight. And his opponent in red, Edgar Ortiz Jr. from Phoenix, Arizona himself. So 2 local products to kick us off. And hey, you get the opportunity to set the tone entertainment-wise if you can come through with a big performance here, Luke.
Yeah, so here we have Ortiz Jr. in the red. Again, he told us body punching was going to be a big part of it. They call him Torito, which means little bull. So we'll see if we can impose that kind of style here. Flores doing a little bit of reaching. Oh, that was nice. That left came right down the middle. And then he hooks it there. See, already BC goes linear, then goes hooking. Those were nice setups there.
Flores was born in Des Moines, Iowa, moved to Glendale, Arizona as a youth. It's just his 11th pro fight, but you can see that ring generalship, that young savviness coming out as he's taking the aggressor's role and bringing it right to Ortiz.
Ortiz doing a lot of covering up, which of course could be quite purposeful. But so far, this is just, again, we're very early into the round, just 1 minute, but this is one-way offense thus far for Flores.
You see that baby face there, just 24 years old, Flores, but that nickname, Carita? Am I nailing that?
Carita, which means little face, technically.
Yeah, well, what Flores...
Nice combination there, ending with the right hand. Now he's putting things together, right, BC? So before we had linear lefts, then we had hooking lefts. Now we're having a little bit of both, and then the right following behind it.
Sharp, clean punching and working the body as well is Danny Barrios Flores. Good showing in the opening round from that southpaw position.
And by the way, pay attention to the lead outside foot positioning. Everyone talks about how you have to be on the outside, which is true for your dominant hand, but you can actually have lead inside foot position where your opponent is on the outside, but that actually brings your jab hand closer. I bring this up to say, BC, whenever you have orthodox versus southpaw, just see where their lead feet are, because that will tell you a lot about their shot selection or how they don't set up their punches well enough. But so far, both guys doing the right thing.
Flores has already escaped near clinch situations by getting around the left arm of Ortiz Jr., almost trying to spin him around in motion to try to open up opportunity for a clean shot.
Maintaining center position here, same thing off that pivoting lead foot.
When we asked him, this is Danny Barrios Flores, about that nickname Carita, he said he's the youngest of his family, and he's the only one without a beard. So I guess it would make sense.
Yes, Carita is sort of, it's a little bit like baby face. It's not quite the same translation, but it's a little bit like that.
Well, he said, look, I would love to have a beard like everybody else in my family. It's just too patchy. I feel his pain, all right? I feel his pain.
A team beard over here.
Ortiz having to show a decent beard early on here as Flores continues to find home. And it's more of a pot shotter down the stretch of this round, but big round for Flores to open things up.
I gotta say, thus far, nice flurry to end the round as well. Gotta say, BC, through the first round, Flores just looks better everywhere. He is better at range. He is much better about setting up his shots as well. And then, as you can see, he's differentiating the combinations he's throwing to put everything else together. And he appears to be better as an inside fighter, which I gotta tell you, I kind of thought Ortiz might be better in that space. And there he's holding a little bit, as you can see. But look who reset the distance, goes to the body, then up top, and then pivoting out, maintaining center position. That's a great round for Flores.
Very impressive showing from Danny Barrios Flores as we look into the corner here of one Edgar Ortiz Jr. No stranger to the art chair, if you will.
No, he's
his canvas.
He's had a few moments there, and you can see the bull tattoo on his left arm, sort of following in the nickname there.
See if the bull can figure out the matador that has been Danny Barrios Flores. Round two in this 6-round bout, super bantamweight squaring off.
Now, Ortiz is going to have to do something, BC. I think he would agree to get respect or to discipline Flores or back him up, because right now he's more or less able to do whatever he wants.
Well, it's going to be up to Ortiz to change the flow of this fight, but typically that comes by landing something that brings that respect across, that you're not going to be able to have that success pot shotting or hitting with clean combinations like Flores did in the opening round. Good left cross, buckled to Ortiz's feet briefly. You love the sound of a clean, hard body shot, especially if you're the one landing it, as Flores did right there with the left hand.
Flores is very good. Watch after he lands, he either smothers, he gets defensively sound by covering up, as you can see like that, and then pushes into his opponent, or he'll pivot out to avoid any follow-up attack. That's a very well-trained fighter right there.
You can see the amateur technique and background, the pedigree shining through, even though Flores, told us had a very small amateur career, just 64 fights, but I won 60 of them. Didn't have the money to go to the big tournaments and chase the dream, but he was a 2-time Arizona Golden Gloves champion. And just 24 years old here, looking good in round two.
And again, just very clean foot positioning from Flores.
I like the activity there from Ortiz. After he got stung with that left hand, he let his hands go. He's not going to win this fight looking. He's going to have to walk in, welcome the danger, Maybe try to slow Flores down to the body.
The problem is he's trying to catch and then throw. He's not really setting it up. He's not confusing Flores about when he's going. So Flores is just basically able to time it or get out of the way, whatever he can see coming, which is so far just about all of it.
Another clean counter left hand from Flores. Oof. Each time he catches Ortiz overextending, he really catches him. He makes him pay for the technical mishaps. Ortiz starting to get a little bit more urgent here. Flores really just capitalizing on Ortiz's guard being down. When he goes to throw, he's not bringing his gloves back up quick enough, and Flores is making him pay.
Also, he's winning the lead hand battle. Pay attention to the right hand of Flores and the left hand of Ortiz. Now, not in every circumstance, but when they're kind of facing off and pawing at one another, you watched Flores pull the glove down and then go on top of it. This is what I mean when I say he's winning in every phase. And again, who do you see taking center? It's Flores again.
Well, Flores is certainly a smart technical fighter, but he's fighting in a high-energy, high-paced, not necessarily a brawling style, but it's turning one-dimensional like that, or one-sided is probably the better way to say it. Round 2 behind us. 2 good rounds for Danny Barrios Flores.
Yeah, I'd say it's a better round, relatively speaking, for Ortiz, but yes, Flores very much up 2 rounds to nothing on our unofficial scorecard.
We mentioned both of these fighters, young from the greater Phoenix area. Flores says, I knew Ortiz. I saw him growing up. I remember him on the amateur circuit. They never did cross paths, though, in terms of fighting one another or preparing one another. They fight for local bragging rights here and obviously the chance to advance on in their career to bigger opportunities. A little bit of swelling you can see developing on the face of Ortiz.
He's been hit with a lot. It's only been 6 minutes of fighting, but he has been wearing it for about all 6 of them. That's what I mean with the lead hand positioning. See that? Let's see who can win that battle here. Good job by Flores to get his elbow down to frame him off and away, as you see the red there again, so he can reclaim center position.
Flores using that quick defensive jab each time Ortiz tries to lean in to throw. Flores getting a little wild, but he mixed in 2 left hands. The action's heating up just a bit as Ortiz now realizes, I got to step on the gas.
Vicious right hand to the body from Flores. Wow, what a shot.
It's funny, when we asked Flores, how would you describe your style? He said, you know, more of a boxer. I like to hit and not get hit. But then one sentence later, hey, but if I'm in the pocket, I might as well at least hang out in there and let my hands go. I'm not afraid of that. That sort of hybrid between the 2 styles has been effective for him.
Man, Flores is just beating him to the punch every time. Look at that. Left hook to the body, left shoulder, pushes him back, right hand. Now here he's exchanging a little bit because he's standing right in front of him. But you can see the depth of skill, relatively speaking, is fairly vast.
Flores willing to welcome the potential danger here of standing and trading with Ortiz. He's getting the better of the offense repeatedly. They both punched at the same time there, caught each other's hands right in the middle. You rarely see that with that type of noise from it.
Boy, Ortiz has a chin, but he is nearly square. Look at his stance. Oh, my word. He's just kind of walking forward. He's getting, and I love what Flores is doing where he's pawing with certain shots and then changing the speed and power in the middle of the combination to sort of disrupt the rhythm in his own timing and make it harder to get any kind of counters.
Combination punching. Ortiz looks like he could go here. Flores smart to mix in these hard body shots, Luke, as he has been wearing down Ortiz's gas tank and will the majority of this round.
Yeah, I gotta say, I don't know if this fight's gonna go the full 6, BC.
I don't know if this fight's going to get out of this round as Flores lands another flurry, clean right cross as he squared up. Fans have enjoyed the uptick in entertainment here as both fighters letting their hands go. It's the same as the first 2 rounds, another clean combination in the left hook from Flores.
And now Ortiz covered in his own blood.
Break, step back. Watch your head.
Boy, I gotta tell you, if you're Ortiz's corner, and this is just me, a guy with an opinion who's watching from afar, if you're Ortiz's corner, you have a decision to make here about how much longer you want to let this go on. This is not essential abuse. If he doesn't turn it around here, I would imagine they have some difficult calls to make.
Yeah, as we look at the replay here from the action in round 3, that clean right hand. Ortiz squared up basically, or sorry, Flores, and was able to switch stances almost and land the power right hand, switch back, go to the body. Midway through this 6-round fight, the blood, the swelling, it's just one clean punch after another.
Right.
Flores has been a sharpshooter. The lapse in defense for Ortiz is catching up with him.
And he did land a big shot there, we should acknowledge that, but it was largely a function of Flores kind of over-positioning himself and kind of standing in front, which he's normally not doing. But it was a good shot from Ortiz. He's game. He's certainly game for this opportunity, but right now he's being majorly outclassed.
You see the wear and tear on the face of Edgar Ortiz Jr., but we start round 4, super bantamweights. Danny Barrios Flores in the blue gloves. This has been his show. See if he can finish Ortiz off in this round.
I'm sorry to cut you off, BC. He's just walking into range.
Now or never for Ortiz, as you wouldn't believe his corner will let him go for too much longer as that blood continues to flow.
And he's trying to get his jab going, but this is where the lead hand fighting comes into play. Flores is either parrying it down like that, slipping and countering.
Hard left counter from Flores, and he backs it right up with a trio of quick jabs.
He's caught him with that lead 2 a number of times, then switches it up with the same motion, and then comes with a lead 3.
Credit to Ortiz here for not slowing down. He's trying everything he has to try to turn the momentum here. He's just walking into clean shots repeatedly.
I mean, I tell you what, Flores told us at that fighter meeting he was here because he's been waiting for an opportunity. He's been waiting to showcase on a bigger card with a bigger audience on a bigger stage what he could do. I got to tell you, BC, he is not wasting this opportunity at all.
Ortiz calls him forward.
Ortiz's face is a mess.
Another clean left hand from Flores. This won't, you got to believe this won't go on too much longer if Ortiz keeps taking these type of punches, but no slowing down. Right back into a clean left hand from Flores.
I mean, he's truly getting hit everywhere. There's not one scenario in this fight, short of literally standing in front of Ortiz, where he is getting the better of Flores. It's just, it doesn't exist.
The action slows down just a bit.
I gotta say, pretty remarkable that Ortiz hasn't been on the canvas yet. He's got a lot of heart.
He's got the warrior spirit. And as he continues to fatigue, his hands are down and he is there for the taking from Flores.
Also, Flores might be, he's been throwing a lot of punches. Let's see how well he can manage resources if he has a very difficult opponent who sticks around, even though he's just getting teed off on.
3-punch combination briefly wobbles Ortiz. Flores not known as a big-time puncher. Just 2 stoppages in his 10 victories. But it's the accumulation of offense here that is creating that damage. The swelling, the bloody mess, but will Ortiz survive another 3-minute frame?
I gotta tell you, for my money, they can stop this at any point, right? I mean, if you feel differently, say so. I don't necessarily need to see 2 more rounds of a guy get beat up like this. And of course, it's the referee's call, it's the commission's call, it's the corner's call, it's the doctor's call, and they're all there, and they're the ones with say. But it just looks to me like he is outmatched, and there's not a lot of reason to believe that that's going to change in the next 6 minutes.
Round 4 highlights here of the handiwork from Flores. Can't miss with those combinations. Ortiz looks like he's game to go for another round as we close in on the start of round 5. 8-round super bantamweights. Largely one-sided effort, certainly in the favor of Flores, but Ortiz proving to be game, which can come into play if Flores uses too much of that gas to try to get rid of him.
Now, Ortiz just blew his nose. I don't know if he has a broken nose, in which case if he blew his nose and it is broken, it's about to swell up very badly, but it's just something to pay attention to. I don't know what's about to happen there, but I did see him blow his nose in the corner. Could be a bad thing.
Either way, you have to believe Ortiz's time is limited here, which is why he's coming out so urgent. There's not a lot of steam on those shots. Some textbook combinations here from Danny Barrios Flores.
This is better from Ortiz.
Well, it's clear that Flores doesn't seem to have the one-punch power to hurt him. It's just going to be dependent on how busy Flores can be to potentially get the referee involved in a stoppage. The more he lands cleanly, the more Ortiz begins to wobble.
Yeah, you can see Flores touch, 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 throw. Right? You see him touching, 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 and then he's going to change it up with a big bomb, both in speed and power.
Clean counter uppercut with the left hand from Flores.
Also, look at how many times Flores either rolls with the punch or gets right under it, ducking, weaving, whatever he may be doing, because he can see all of it coming. All he has to do is just time his defense. And then, of course, this is common when you have a southpaw versus orthodox fighter, a clash of heads.
Something you said is echoing true from Ortiz. It is a very predictable offense as he tends to square up, throw more arm punches at this point than really sitting down on them, but trying anything he can to land that shot that might change the momentum.
He just can't find Flores. You can't find him. Unless he's truly flat-footed and up against the ropes, he's just having a difficult time locating him. So BC, it looks to me like through the first 3, maybe 4 rounds, you could say that Flores was really trying to get him out of there. He's definitely still going after it, let's be clear about it, but it looks like he's taking his time a little bit more with the understanding that this one might go the full distance.
Yeah, he's adjusting his pace to the reality, which is he has a very tough opponent in front of him who is not dissuaded by the power, although once again Ortiz seemed to get rattled. I think it might be more if this cut gets worse, could that lead to a stoppage? I think Flores hasn't done is slow down his attempt at least at winning these rounds clean.
I give Ortiz respect, I certainly do. He's a very tough guy and a gritty competitor, but he needs a miracle to win this contest.
5 rounds complete, our 6th round super bantamweight opener. And here's a look at what we saw in round 5 as Ortiz continued to try to put on that pressure, but they clashed heads. Most of it was ineffective aggression. Even though Danny Barrios Flores is slowing down just a bit, when it comes down to his advantage here, which is being able to land cleanly just about any power shot he wants, that equation is not changing.
Right, right. And still able to move, right? He's not Ortiz is not really cutting the ring off. So as a consequence, he's able to, again, smother, push, pivot, whatever tool he wants to use, get out of the way of a big, windy, looping punch, get underneath, and then recapture center of the ring. He's basically, this is a ring generalship, do whatever you want kind of bout.
No question about it. We are just about 90 minutes away from the start of tonight's pay-per-view card, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. Pacific. Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva, a 5-fight pay-per-view card. We'll be with you up until the start of it, but the final round here, 6 begins. Super bantamweights, unbeaten Danny Flores.
And he did it from the right-handed stance. He's back to southpaw now, but you can see he's switching stance. They can call this fight anytime.
Danny Barrios Flores going for the finish.
Yes, that's quite all right.
He got it. It's a knockout, the third in 11 pro fights for the Glendale, Arizona product. Danny Barrios Flores. And Luke, from start to finish, this was impressive.
This was one-way traffic for the entirety of the bout. They came out in the 6th round. Ortiz needed a miracle both to win and really it looked like to get the referee from intervening. Couldn't do it. Carita all over him. And there you see Carita telling us, Flores, this was his moment. He really, really, really wants to take advantage. And here you can see, BC, he's just almost switching stance right in front of him, just bombing to get the referee to intervene. And that's exactly what he did. But the reality was he was better at range. He was better in the mid-range. He was better up close. He was just an overall vastly superior fighter.
As you see the commission jumping up on the ring apron to alert the referee to stop the fight. The right call. The corner seemed like they wanted to save their fighter, and Ortiz showed us throughout the entirety of this fight just how tough he is. But for Danny Barrios Flores, not a big power puncher, but you don't have to be, certainly, when you have the right style. We know he can box. He's got a decent amateur background. You saw the footwork advantage he has in there, but he also knows, look, he needs to be offensive. He needs to be fun. He needs to take the fight to his opponents. He had no trouble doing that.
No, zero. He was able for the opening bell to create openings, right? That's one thing. What's one thing to land on an opponent who's giving you openings, and to be clear, Ortiz was, but there were other moments where you could see Flores creating those moments, setting traps, having him walk in, and doing it, as we mentioned, BC, whether he had lead inside foot position off the jab, whether he had outside foot position off the cross, whether he was putting combinations together by going side to side, changing the timing, changing the rhythm. Great stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, official time, 30 seconds of round number 6. Referee Tony Simon called the halt to the bout. Your winner by way of TKO and still undefeated from Glendale, Arizona, Danny Barrios Flores.
The local kid makes good, just 24 years old. Danny Barrios Flores improves to 11-0. You heard the time, 30 seconds of the round 6, the final round. One-way traffic here from start to finish. Hey, the community came out and supported 2 local fighters here. And once again, we want to echo the courage, the heart shown here by Edgar Ortiz Jr. He was just overmatched.
And Flores has been, I keep saying it, has been waiting for this moment. Now he's soaking it in. Good for him. He should.
It was an entertaining fight from Flores. You didn't know his name coming in. You're certainly going to be watching moving forward here in the super bantamweight division. Fight 1 on our Showtime pay-per-view. Countdown preliminary card is in the books. Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell, you know us as the co-hosts of Showtime Digital's Combat Series, the award-winning Morning Combat. We're excited, though, to set the stage, and not just the 2 remaining fights we have on the Countdown show, but everything that leads up to the start of tonight's pay-per-view, 9 p.m. Eastern, only on Showtime pay-per-view, when Jake Paul puts that 5-0 record and this transition from the entertainment world, the social media influencing world, to not just the boxing world, but Luke Thomas, the disruption world. You brought up an interesting theme in the build-up to tonight's PaulSilva card, that Jake Paul's fighting Anderson Silva, true, but the larger battle he seems to be undertaking is the MMA industry, Dana White, fighter pay, everything else that goes along with that.
Yeah, Jake Paul has a fight with Anderson Silva tonight, but he has picked a fight with the sport of mixed martial arts. People keep wanting him to fight a real boxer. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but the reality is he, right now, certainly doesn't need to. Here is what he is attempting. He is attempting to pick a fight with an industry, and he is banking on the fact, or the hope anyway, I should say, that he can get his own boxing skills good enough to beat guys who aren't really boxers, but have a big name, have a big combat sports following, have a big combat sports pedigree, and all the while poke at the industry's insecurities and, frankly, some of its unfairness, whether it be the nature of fighters not having an association or a union, or they're not protected by the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act, which boxers are. You pick it, he has needled it at times. And the whole idea is that this rivalry, which he is stoking, can take him to heights of fortune, heights of potential credibility, heights of whatever you can think of. But to do that, he has to get past maybe the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. Granted, a 47-year-old version of it, but still, we're talking about insane pedigree. And BC, the question is, did he bite off more than he can chew?
Yes.
It's a brilliant thing to go and pick a fight with an industry because they're going to want to fight back. Be careful who you wish for. You may regret it in the end. We'll see.
I think what's most exciting about following Jake Paul's journey into boxing, which obviously was met with critics along the way saying, get this carnival stuff away, show us you're a real fighter. Well, to echo once again, Jake Paul was supposed to be fighting Tommy Fury and then supposed to be fighting Asim Rahman Jr. So he did try to fight real fighters in the same portion of where he's at in his career, which is unique to begin with. 5-0, a regular pay-per-view headliner. But they call him a serial risk taker. That's how he was announced into Friday's weigh-in. And I think that's a big part of the equation here for the Paul brothers. It's the same reason why Logan Paul fought Floyd Mayweather a year ago when who the heck had that on their bingo card as a potential combat sports event. And now Logan Paul making the transition to WWE. It's about doing things that would be a dream to some local kid from a blue-collar Ohio factory town, which is more or less from the greater Cleveland area where the Pauls project from. The fact that Jake Paul is willing to find out in the ring where his ceiling is rather than at the negotiation table, it speaks loudly on the guts, on his, this is, is this any different than Evel Knievel trying to drive a motorcycle over a canyon? This is in some degree Jake Paul going, I want to try that. Let's see. Oh, it's dangerous. Let's give that a try. That brings the potential for a unhappy ending. It also brings the potential for entertainment, which is why so many eyes are on this card. And as you mentioned, the potential crossover here, because what do we have here? We've got Nate Diaz, the coaching Chris Avila on the undercard, which could be a big future opponent. Uriah Hall, an ex-UFC fighters on this undercard.
How about George St. Pierre
has been added to tonight's pay-per-view broadcast for his unique insight into this opportunity. There's always potential future Jake Paul opponents hanging around, ready to jump right in and continue to build these big events. How much, though, does he have to win tonight, or does he have to entertain tonight to keep that same momentum in a fight where just last week he was the underdog, now he's the favorite again?
In judging, again, if you're going to keep going down this path of picking a fight with MMA, I think two things have to happen here for Jake. One, there has to be some measure of credibility. That doesn't necessarily mean a win. You could imagine a scenario where folks are like begrudgingly respectful even if he loses, but in general, that means it's a win. But here's the other part too. If you're gonna pick a fight, they're gonna want a reason to keep being an antagonist with you. If he goes in there and gets a win and it's relatively ho-hum, the rivalry between Jake Paul and MMA, it could conceivably fizzle out, in which case, I don't want to see that anymore, blah, blah, blah. What he's got to go in there and do is win authoritatively, and re-stoke the flames of this rivalry, or whatever you want to call it, that he has created that has brought him to this position tonight.
Absolutely. And you could make, there's very few combat sports crossover events you can make that would be any bigger than tonight's fight, that would be any bigger than a potential Jake Paul, Nate Diaz fight. I mean,
That's a big one.
There's big stakes here for Jake Paul beyond just proving the particular boxing critics wrong. He's got to prove wrong the potential of danger that he's facing here in one Anderson Silva, which is why we're so excited. But it's not just the main event here, a 5-fight card this evening. And Luke, you could do the whole, hey, there's something for everybody here on this menu. There really is at the end of the day. You're going to have your traditional matchups, and certainly unbeaten 7-0 Ashton Silva, the 18-year-old lightweight.
H2O.
The first young up-and-coming fighter signed to Jake Paul's most valuable promotions, which is promoting tonight's event. That'll give you the pure boxing. But we got to look in a few different worlds here for this feature bout when NFL running back, ex-All-Pro Le'Veon Bell, 30 years old, has transitioned into boxing, knocked out Adrian Peterson last month with one punch. Well, now he's going to be taking on Uriah Hall, the UFC middleweight contender until he just recently retired, who at 38 is still a man who's known to do things with his hands and feet. This is an uphill battle for Le'Veon Bell, but you got to respect this undertaking.
Yeah, you would imagine that Uriah Hall would have the advantage no matter what. And I do think that. I think most people think that. I think the odds reflect that. But like everything here tonight, it's a lot of uncertainty. He didn't have a super long camp for this. Obviously, this is outside of his traditional weight class. Although I will say, absent sitting down with us and telling us he wasn't our best friend, in general, I think has put him in a much better mood. And Bell is a tremendous athlete, but for combative experience is very inexperienced, especially relative to Hall. The only X factor here, BC, is it's only 4 rounds, Might Hall take a round off to get his bearings? Might Hall decide that, well, you know what, I'm a little unfamiliar in this territory too, because even if he's a striking-based MMA fighter, he's a little more kickboxer than boxer. If you look at sort of the record of his best knockouts, traditionally happen in kind of a kickboxing contest. So while I do expect Hall to look good and I do expect him to win, there are enough, I don't know, matters to this whole thing that made me wonder how it's all going to go.
Just one of the many items on tonight's pay-per-view main card menu that'll be worth watching. But in the ring behind us, we've got fight number 2 on our Showtime pay-per-view countdown. Preliminary action. This is expected to be a good one. In the women's super middleweight division, 168 pounds, we welcome in Shadasia Green, 10-0 with 9 KOs from Paterson, New Jersey. But if you're a big-time sports fan, college sports fan, you may remember her as a former all-conference guard for Old Dominion in women's college basketball. Her opponent that you just saw right there, though, battle-tested at the elite level. Ogleides Suarez, a native of Venezuela, who just 2 fights ago fought for a world title. This is a battle-tested, experienced veteran of more than 30 pro fights. But young Shadasia Green is coming. She's got some big power. Look, this should be fun.
Yeah, in the case of Suarez, she is obviously much more experienced in the boxing realm. We talked to Green earlier this week. Boy, you want to talk about someone who is ready to make a mark, desperate for an opportunity to shine, says she can't get fights, had to change her whole life around to make the switch from from basketball to boxing. So far has done that, and BC is largely a knockout artist, which I'm very curious to see how that plays out in this contest.
8 2-minute rounds.
Don't love the 2-minute rounds in women's boxing. It's a commission call, I get it. They need to be 3-minute rounds, which by the way, we asked Green about that, and she fully agreed.
No question. Green's a heck of a story but she started in boxing. Her mom made her promise that she go the efforts of the 4-year college degree. She was great in basketball before. Then you can come back to boxing when you're an adult. Hey, that's a parent right there teaching responsibility. And after Shadasia Green exited the college basketball realm, she found boxing again. She was on the Olympic team as a heavyweight, but since then, she's cut 41 pounds to get down to this 168-pound division at super middleweight. Is she a prospect who maybe has been sleeping under the radar here in this recent women's renaissance in boxing? Well, I think Ogleides Suarez in the blue gloves is really the perfect candidate to find that out for us.
Yeah, probably not going to, given Suarez's experience, probably not going to be super intimidated by the power. I guess we'll have to see. But has seen a lot of looks, has been in the ring with just a wide array of opponents in a certain way that Green has not to this point. But I cannot overstate Green, of all the fighters we spoke to on the call for the preliminary fighters this week, was the most energized about making a mark. Carito, I put number 2. We saw what he just did.
No question. Suarez, a 2-time title challenger. Lost decisions in both fights. Really excited Suarez was about the potential opportunity on this platform to try to make one more big run at achieving her dream of becoming a world champion.
Right away, it looks like there's a speed difference to me, a hand speed difference. Also, we'll see if how much of it is timing, but Green looks to me like she's got much faster hands. Yeah, already turning her head like that. Yep.
Green is young from a boxing sense, but 33 years old after making that transition from college basketball back into her first love of boxing. Green really credited her time training for the Olympic team alongside 2-time gold medalist Clarissa Shields, fighting against, sparring against male champions. She really started to realize quick that she could do this. She could do this for a living. She could potentially be a problem. A good start here in round 1 for Green.
This is a good feel-out round for Green, but I got a bad feeling for how this is going to go for Suarez. Green did a great job there just at the end of that round, setting it up with a double jab right hand, and looked very smooth. And again, it looks to me like there's a big hand speed differential between these competitors.
Here's a little bit of the action looking back at round 1. You see that clean right hand landing from Green. Credit Suarez for moving with the punch to lessen the impact. She is a veteran.
Her U.S. debut, I believe you mentioned that, it's her U.S. debut out of Caracas, Venezuela.
Suarez has fought a mixed level of competition, like I mentioned, at the highest level for world titles twice. Stays active in between in her native Venezuela. Tonight, her U.S. debut, as Luke mentioned. But if there's one thing we took away from talking to both, Green's confidence is through the roof. Certainly not in a cocky way, a humble, excited, ready to leave her mark type of way. Green told us she credits the typical things that a career at a high level in basketball would give her: athleticism, agility, to helping her boxing game. But you know, the biggest thing is the poise. She played basketball at Tennessee against the legendary coach Pat Summitt for Old Dominion, had big performances on bright stages on national television. She was really big on that being something that has prepared her intangibly for this type of opportunity.
Yeah, playing against the dominant women's program, that or UConn, whatever you want to say. In either case, you're going into hostile territory, a big Division I environment like that. And after the game that they had, Pat Summitt actually called out Shadeja Green by name for how well she had performed. So this is someone who is obviously a great athlete, but right now is sort of trying to find her way to figuring out exactly what's working against Suarez.
Step back.
Green from Patterson, New Jersey. Patterson, also the last name of her late grandfather, Robert Patterson, who she said sparred with Marvin Hagler, was around boxing all of his life. She said when she first put on the gloves, everyone said, there's Bobby Patterson's granddaughter. She hits like a mule. She said even her mother has a really good right hand, Luke. It's all in the family here.
She's going to need it. So it is looking like Green's forward pressure, or perhaps this is just more of the natural posture that Suarez assumes. Suarez is now content to counter-strike, and Green is leading. These 2-minute rounds make anything to get going very difficult, but that appears to be the dynamic that these two have settled into.
Yeah, you can't leave your punches unthrown in this type of setup with 2-minute rounds. Good jabbing, though, from Green.
Nice pull counter she tried, yeah.
She was certainly the ring general in this round once again. 2 rounds complete in our 8-round co-feature here on the Showtime pay-per-view countdown preliminary card.
Curious to see which one of these two heading into round 3 is going to up the amount of volume they're throwing. Right now, I get 2 rounds, kind of trying to figure it out. But it's only an 8-round contest, and each one of them are only 2 minutes, whether we like that or not. Now is about the time to start turning it up a little bit. We'll see who can get that going.
Pugliatis Suarez has that advantage in terms of experience without question. She's maybe more of a pure boxer, but she's yet to get going in the face of the length, the speed, and the power of Shadeja Green.
So far, just really reacting to what Green is presenting to her, finding an opportunity here or there. These are hardly runaway rounds. It's not like the last fight. But it is Green who appears to be doing the best work.
Suarez much more offensive here to start off. Good counter right hand from Green. Pugliatis Suarez in the blue gloves goes by the nickname La Nina, Luke.
La Nina, the girl, the little girl. Good right hands so far from Green as she's catching Suarez coming in a little bit. And you can notice the lead hand position for Green. She's keeping that hand kind of low. And so when the punches come, they're coming almost, not quite like an up jab style, but when she hooks them around the side, it's to keep them out of the sight line from whatever Suarez is typically looking at.
Yes.
And of course she can move an opponent, and then she can parry from there as well.
We asked Suarez about her own strengths as a fighter. She calls herself a finesse boxer, but says, I'm just someone that knows my way around the ring. I can adapt to any style, which makes it hard to define my own.
Good double jab right hand there from Green. And another right hand over the top catches her coming in. These are nice shots.
These shots are certainly moving Suarez and giving her something to think about. Very short right hand on the inside from Green landed.
Green is trying to time in between her punches, in particular the jab. She's waiting for the jab right there. You just saw it. Now she was hooking with it, but she's waiting for the lead hand to go, and then she's trying to throw either around it or through the middle.
Big surge here in the final minute of round 3 for Shadasia Green.
That's her best round, I think. Right, BC? Would you agree?
Yeah, she established her power late, was fighting at a good pace. Really wasn't giving Suarez any time to recover, and I think a few of those right hands, I saw a reaction from Suarez that showed me they are certainly making a mark.
Did you see her own corner just now grabbed her lead hand and put it up by the side of her face, because she's throwing it either as a hook or a straight, however you want to say, depending on what the setup is, but then not really bringing it back. And then because she's not feinting her way, Green can see it coming a mile away, and so is just bombing on her as a consequence.
Good pace from both fighters to start off here. Feeling each other out, making adjustments. See if the finesse fighter Suarez can begin to land consistently. It's been one punch here and there, coming up short on her combination attempts.
Fourth round. Take a step back, please. That's good. Thank you. Box.
So we begin around 4. 168 pounds is the division. And Green, a former Olympic heavyweight, she credits time spent with the father-son duo Kenny and Sean Porter in Las Vegas, helping her get down to this level of fighting weight in this division.
Good job.
It's not that Green has been ignoring her jab, but I'll say this for every fighter. I'd like to see her set it up, establish it as a way to get inside quicker on Suarez and start to do damage to the body.
Her corner's calling for it. Small right hand from Suarez gets through.
I think the thing you noted earlier has been the hand speed difference is the biggest obstacle that Suarez is facing at the moment, because when she sets to throw those combinations, Green can time a quicker shot up the middle. Body work from Green. Green settling into a role as a pot-shotting counter artist here.
That pull-2 counter has nearly gotten through a couple of times. That's nice. A little shoulder lean in for the left, and then coming up with the right uppercut from Green.
Right from the Lennox Lewis playbook right there.
But if I'm Green, here's the thing, BC. If I'm Green, and you can hear her coaches calling for this too, this is hardly some grand revelation. When you're in close like that, I know she feels like Suarez is open. It's not like she's not getting through, but she's also allowing Suarez to tie up with her. If she was just a little bit further away and she could stick and move a little bit more, I think she could get more power into what she's doing, make each shot count a little bit more.
Sure, there's definitely a work in progress feel to Shadasia Green, but at 10-0 with 9 KOs, women's boxing on the rise, but still sometimes not as deep. You can find yourself in big fights, and here against a former 2-time world title challenger, it's not just the platform in terms of getting her name known. Shadasia Green has a legitimate chance with a win here, with a win for both, to take steps forward and work themselves into title opportunities, whether her game feels ready or not.
By the way, as a small little plug, if you want to join BC and I after the fights, youtube.com/morningcombat for the official, well, for us anyway, the Jake Paul Anderson Silva post-fight show.
After the conclusion of tonight's pay-per-view card, find us on YouTube, Showtime Sports Channel. All the breakdown from start to finish of what we saw tonight. But round 5 here, women's super middleweights underway. Shadasia Green in the red gloves, black trunks, getting the better of the action, setting a good pace, the aggressor.
I think, personal preference, BC, I feel like Green was when she, it's not like she can't fight in close here. She obviously can. I just don't know if that's her best opportunity here to do meaningful work.
Well, I think the question is sustained meaningful work or one meaningful big punch. The distance that she's standing, she can counter clean because Suarez throws looping combinations at a slower pace. But I wonder if she feels she can end the fight potentially by landing that one big blow.
Nice jab.
Final minute in round 5. Luke, you'd say Suarez is plenty game.
Yeah, she's hardly getting abused here, but it's not like she's found a real great space to work or has found a particular setup that's really devastating and consistently lands. It seems like she's just trying to find something on the inside as they take turns. And you can see here with her left-hand collar tie, a little bit dirty boxing there, but behind the referee's warning. But just not a whole lot of super meaningful punches.
Well, I think fatigue has robbed Suarez of any power at this point in the fight. Some of her defensive holds have led to many clean punches. You see a bit of swelling around the right eye of Suarez.
Just seems to me like Suarez would prefer a fight in close, and Green is obliging her. I still think Green is winning the contest by a pretty considerable margin, but it's interesting, she's fighting her opponent's preferred way to have this bout.
But that is a close enough distance for her to land these type of shots. There's a good combination there. It ends with a left hook to the body. When Suarez has landed, especially the last 2 rounds, not much on him as from this vantage point. See if Green can capitalize on the momentum she's built here, potentially lead toward a stoppage. She's got 9 of them in 10 pro fights, but as she told herself, this is the toughest challenge of her career to date. No one's questioning the experience level of Gladys Suarez, 2-time world title challenger.
Yeah, referee is talking to the judges. I think that's it.
You'd have to guess whether the corner of Gladys Suarez thought that was enough.
They call it a day? He's saying that's it.
5 rounds complete in this scheduled for 8-round super middleweight contest.
Yeah, they're taking her gloves off. That's it.
And that'll do it. It'll be a TKO victory for Shadasia Green, who improves to 11-0 with 10 KOs. And Luke, it didn't, no knockdowns. There wasn't particularly one telling blow, but you saw the stamina lack of it was catching up here with Suarez, and she was getting hit clean and more often than not.
We talked about it before. Green is known as a power puncher, and it looks like her cornerman is working on something on her face or eye or ear we can't see from this particular angle. So maybe something happened where she can feel it. Maybe her face got broken and she's too tough to take a knee or whatever the case may be. I don't know. I want to be clear. I am merely speculating, but I just want to say it one more time. Green is a known devastating puncher. Who's to say what damage she suffered?
Well, we started to see the swelling around the right eye. Right there, you see her left eye also a little bit puffy underneath. That was the accumulation of plenty of clean shots from Shadasia Green, who was the ring general. Landed a better percentage as far as we saw from our vantage point. And certainly landed the telling shots. Suarez never able to land anything of consequence in the end.
No, I didn't see anything. I mean, there's a couple of punches that got through that were nice, but in general, right, like, was there a 30 or 45-second window where she was leading the dance in that way? I don't recall one.
Let's bring it in, guys.
All right, it's time to hear the official decision. Rambling Ralph Velez Jr.
Official time. The end of round number 5. The fighter out of the red corner is unable to continue. Your winner by TKO and still undefeated, Shadasia Green.
And I'll say this, BC, and I always like making this point. Listen, she didn't want anymore. There's no shame in that. Again, she might have an injury, she might not, I don't know. She fought 5 rounds. She realized she was outmatched, and she said, I had enough. I accept that. I don't like seeing fighters take punishment that they're not interested in taking, or they don't need to take, or don't want to take. Let's save it for another day. There will be one. Today is a day that belongs to Shadeja Green.
No question. I couldn't echo that anymore. Shadeja Green, you're going to have to, I feel like we're going to see her again. Still a work in progress as she's finalizing the nuances in her game. But we saw a lot to like as she continues to advance forward, and now she's beaten a former 2-time world title challenger.
Yeah, I mean, here she was. I was remarking that she was fighting on somewhat of her opponent's terms, or at least in a physical way that her opponent probably preferred to, but I bet what she was feeling was the will slowly getting sucked out of Suarez as the rounds went on and the rounds went on, which is probably why she stuck with it. Certain kind of fight feel that you can get inside the ring, you can't get from watching it outside. Either way, great performance from her. She clearly was the better fighter. Congratulations.
And as a human interest story, at 33 years old, she is one to watch. The former Olympian, the former college basketball standout, now making noise here in the super middleweight division. But we've got 2 of our 3 fights complete here on the Showtime pay-per-view countdown preliminary action. Brian Campbell, Luke Thomas, of course, alongside myself. And Luke, we're talking about the main card. Yeah, it's Jake Paul, Anderson Silva on top. Boy, that Uriah Hall, Le'Veon Bell matchup is interesting. But speaking of human interest stories, Dr. Mike Varshavsky is a 32-year-old family practice physician who took a charity fight. He's been boxing on the side for a decade. He won that charity fight in the main event in May, all 5 rounds in front of 10,000 people. And with 22 million combined social media followers for his various wellness and fitness tips, his interviews with Dr. Fauci, and etc., we have a busy man, a renaissance man of sorts, who is suspending his Hippocratic oath to do no harm, as he told us, and is going to welcome a combat sports veteran, Bellator, UFC, and Nick Diaz Academy member, Chris Avila. They're much different in size in this bout, which will be 185 pounds. Chris Avila fighting typically around 168. But you talk about not knowing what it's going to look like. Tonight's going to be entertainment. I mean, get your popcorn ready. I don't know how to break this down.
Yeah, I would hesitate to do that because I have no idea what to say either. Although it is kind of remarkable about Dr. Mike, which is, you can say quite literally he's not doing it for the money. He had 1 previous exhibition prior to this, which he donated his purse to. Tonight, he is donating the entirety of his purse to the, I think it's the Boys and Girls Club of Harlem.
Yes.
The whole thing goes there. So listen, there's actually nothing wrong with fighting for a purse in most circumstances. Hello, it's prize fighting. But just to be clear about this guy's intentions, and I'm sure, yes, he's enjoying some of the other acclaim that comes with being on a pay-per-view card that airs on Showtime, but he's not collecting a check here. He's doing this for, I think, a lot of personal challenge, whatever you want to say. It's not to collect a fat paycheck.
He seems to be big on the whole maximize yourself, get the most out of your personal potential in every aspect of life. And this is certainly a dangerous sidestep, and Dr. Mike told us his family, his friends had the same reaction you would expect coming in, but he credits boxing for really giving him a centerpiece of discipline and really freedom in a sense. It was after his mom passed a decade ago that Mike got into boxing, found refuge in it, as so many people do. But on the flip side for Chris Avila, hey, being a Nick Diaz sort of sidekick in a way, or Nate Diaz as well, the 2 brothers, Nate will be in attendance in his corner tonight, that gets you a certain level of celebrity. Can Chris Avila fight, though? It's hard to gauge what he might do against a celebrity here, but he should win this on terms of combat sports, the way things are supposed to be laid out, right?
You would think, but he has, and you're right, he should. I've not seen what the odds are to this one recently. You would imagine he would, but here's the thing that you could kind of thread this needle on, which is Chris Avila has a tendency to kind of, I won't say relax in fights, but you wouldn't say he's a pressure fighter. You wouldn't say he's a high-volume fighter. He tends to be something of a counterpuncher at times as well. Is it conceivable that this guy who's got very little experience in Dr. Mike might be able to kind of jab his way through the course of these fights? I think it's only a 4-round contest, right?
Correct.
Right, so we're talking about a guy who could potentially sprint in effort, so to speak, behind the jab. win 3 of the 4 rounds, avoid a big punch. He is the bigger guy, should be able to tolerate it and get the whole thing. Like, there is a very clear-cut case for that in that sense. The question is, what strategy does he employ, and how much is he able to execute it over the duration of the bout, however minimal it might be?
And how much does that size difference ultimately make a play? Look, we don't know whether Dr. Mike can really fight, but he's in shape. He's a big dude. He's 6'3". He's a southpaw, I believe, as well. So for Chris Avila, he's going to have to show us some things that, you know, maybe he hasn't up to this point. He went 8-9 as a mixed martial artist with that UFC and Bellator background. He's 1-1 as a pro boxer. We have seen him on a Jake Paul undercard before, but just another interesting storyline as we continue to build toward tonight's pay-per-view main card start, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, Showtime pay-per-view, presenting all things Jake Paul, Anderson Silva. And Luke, back to the main event, and we know what this means for Jake Paul to continue as the face of this sort of crossover boxing bubble, whether his intentions are true to try to become a real boxer or just make some fun big events and fill up his, bucket list, take another item off. But for Anderson Silva, at this age, is it about money? Is it about something else? What's your read on this legend entering this fight week?
Right, well, I don't see how money is not a big motivator here. And again, I just said, I don't say that pejoratively, it's prize fighting. If there's a big prize and you're eligible to get it, in most circumstances, I'm going to tell you to go get it.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think he's going to get a big paycheck. He wants one. That's probably a big motivating factor. The second part is, if you're not an MMA fan, you may not appreciate this. At the end of his run in the UFC, he was taking some losses. Obviously, he was an older guy competing against the very best, mostly fight over fight. And so it just wasn't getting great results. And at the time he had his retirement fight in MMA, which, by the way, was against Uriah Hall, who's also on this card, it was in a facility where there weren't a lot of fans. There just wasn't a lot of fanfare on his exit.
That's not how you say goodbye to really a Mount Rushmore type guy.
I'll say this, for one of the guys who's the best, who has a case anyway, is the best MMA fighter ever, his exit from that organization was very quiet. And so here he is a little bit later in his athletic life. He gets a chance, as I just mentioned, for a big payday. He tries boxing, and he goes down to Mexico in Guadalajara and takes on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and outperforms basically everyone's expectations, including even MMA fans. Be honest, when he went down there, we thought he could make it interesting. We did not think he was going to win exhibition or whatever else you want to say. And not just that, he looked great on tape. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't some kind of thing, well, they just did him a favor. No, he looked tremendous. And so what you got to understand is, on the MMA side of things, this is the Anderson Silva redemption tour. Yeah. This is Anderson Silva getting a chance to go out in front of his fans and perform magic for them. At least that's what they hope. One last or one additional time beyond what he was able to do in MMA. Will he be able to do it? We're going to find out in a few hours.
Yeah, I mean, look, he created magic that night in Mexico. We were skeptical, and the reason why you're skeptical is when aging or retiring fighters come back or hang on for a big opportunity. Look, it's a spectacle. It can be hit or miss. There can be a Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz 3 that you want to forget about. Anderson Silva hasn't looked remotely someone you want to forget about as a boxer since crossing over. Yes, he's sort of always had these skills. Yes, he's a strike-first MMA fighter, maybe the greatest striker we've ever seen, both with his feet and with his hands. But his ability to stay this young, make the transition as easy as he has, it's remarkable. And that is really what Anderson Silva has done over the entirety of his career. Create magic moments. He lives for that. His connection with the fans is so pure. He looks at himself as entertainer, artist, almost first. I don't want to say first because with the exception of him losing his UFC title to Chris Weidman, where he got caught showboating, it never seemed to get in the way, this sort of free-flowing, showboating superhero style that he has. It almost fueled him. That was a case against Chris Weidman where it caught up to him, but his transition to boxing has been eye-opening. It's the reason why, if we didn't have that upset of Chavez Jr., maybe we would focus a little bit more on this age of 47. But like Roy Jones Jr., who is Anderson's boxing idol, did he hang on too long in boxing? Without question. Why was he able to do that? Because he had supernatural speed and reaction ability in his prime, as did Anderson Silva. You don't lose that all overnight. Silva's still explosive. He can still hit Jake Paul tonight with the kind of shots he doesn't see coming. His footwork is sort of next level. Can he fight for a sustained pace? I think that's the biggest question with this age block in the 47 years old. We're going to see 8 rounds tonight if it goes that long. I'm not really sure which one has more potential to falter late in a fight. Jake Paul has been in a little bit of back and forth action with Tyron Woodley, hasn't yet been in a sustained long war. We don't know. We don't know who that's going to favor, who not, and it just plays into this overall theme of you can scout this as much as you want. You can watch all their fights.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. And for Jake Paul, talk about the incremental growth in terms of performance, but also matchmaking. He's had now, what, 10 months to deal with since that rematch against Tyron Woodley. Will he have to show us huge improvements? Yes. And I think Jake has been smart enough to say this week, I need to be perfect. That's just what it is. He may have to be in certain key situations, but I'm most interested in seeing who sets that early pace, who sets the early mental advantage through their performance, because have we seen Jake kind of rally back? Well, he got hurt against Woodley in the first fight and he won it. He got cut in the second fight and won it by knockout. But there's certain unanswered questions about his own intangibles that he can only answer in the ring tonight. And it's what we don't know that really has me just kind of putting my analysis to the side, buckling up and saying 9 p.m. Eastern tonight in this building. Buckle up at home, buy your ticket, order it right now on pay-per-view, because it's going to be something. Will it be special? Will it be sad? You never know in these type of events, but it's going to be something, Luke Thomas.
Yeah, a couple points I want to drive home here is, one, a lot of MMA fighters at this sort of senior stage, by the time they get to the Jake Paul orbit, one thing you consistently hear from them is that some MMA fans would like to imagine that boxing is easier than MMA. No, it is not. Only somebody very confused would think that. But in terms of how difficult it is to, or I should say, in terms of the injury load on the body, yes, actually boxing training is a little bit easier than MMA training in that sense, especially for older fighters. Anderson had talked about how fresh he feels, how much better he feels, because he doesn't have to go do 2 hours of wrestling and an hour of jiu-jitsu and everything else that goes into it, where you can just get all kinds of twisted and mangled and you just never know. It's a little bit more predictable session to session about what kind of challenge he's going to be facing. However, BC, I do wonder about that, not just the conditioning and how good he feels. Jake Paul, if you look at the tape on him, I did an hour-long breakdown study on him. An hour. That's a lot for Jake Paul, I got to be honest. It probably should have been about 20 minutes.
I mean, what is it? How much ring time has he actually had as a pro?
Fair. But the point I wanted to make was, from the first fight with Woodley to the second fight, there is another common denominator, which is that he likes body work. He invests to the body over and over and over again. In fact, BC, that is how he was able to set up the finishing shot on Tyron Woodley that, yes, was to the head. He had faked to the body and then went over the top. But the reason why the fake worked was because he had invested with body shots.
Can't wait. 9 p.m. Eastern, once again, 6 p.m. Pacific, the start of tonight's Showtime pay-per-view. But we've got one more featured preliminary fight for you right now on tonight's Countdown Show. And we are going to the heavyweight division. 6 rounds, 2 unbeaten fighters. And somebody to watch here in Jeremiah Milton. They call him Dreamland. He's 6-0 with 5 KOs, fighting out of Las Vegas. He's been coming on with the power. He can box a bit too, and tonight he's going to have to get through 5-0 Quentin Sumpter, a product of Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And look, Jeremiah Milton looks like he could be something.
Jeremiah Milton, you talk to the guy, he has a magnetizing personality, has a great nickname, Dreamland, which is related to Black Wall Street from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Also,
he's from Oklahoma, fights out of Las Vegas now.
Right, sends people to the Dreamland. Of course, he mentioned it's got several levels to the nickname, but a big puncher, a quick thinker, and a very athletic heavyweight is what I would say.
As you see Quentin Sumpter, 5-0.
Former football player, Quentin Sumpter.
4 wins by stoppage for Sumpter, who weighed in at just over 219 pounds for this heavyweight fight. His opponent, Jeremiah Milton, came in at 248.2.
At 248.25 pounds, his professional record, 6 victories, no defeats, 5 of his victories coming by.
Gotta love the heavyweight division where anything seemingly can happen.
Truly.
At any time.
Truly. This could go the distance and both guys are huffing for air, or it could go 5 seconds. I mean, we just truly don't know. But I will tell you, like, putting my cards on the table for the audience here, I think Jeremiah Milton's about to have a real nice moment.
See if he can advance, keep that unbeaten record alive. Quentin Sumpter, however, doesn't know how to lose himself.
Okay, fellas, went over the rules in the dressing room. These trunks are a little high, can work in here. These are a little high, work in here. Protect yourself at all times, obey my commands. Touch them up, bomb at the bell.
Bomb at the bell, okay.
6 rounds scheduled for between these two big heavyweights.
Heavyweights, not built for longevity, but they are built for power. Let's see.
28-year-old Jeremiah Milton in the black gloves, purple and green trunks.
Boy, hands down right away from Quentin Sumpter. That is a dangerous game to be playing with this opponent. Let me tell you right now.
Little dance routine on each sidestep, a la Emmanuel Augustus. See if he's trying to play some mind games to bring out a reaction from Jeremiah Milton.
You know why there's not a lot of Emmanuel Augustus clones?
It's hard to pull off.
Right.
Being the drunken master, as he was called in the ring, it is hard to pull off that dance routine and still get off clean punches.
Now his hands are a little bit higher now.
This is just the 15th round of Jeremiah Milton's pro career. You can already see the poise, the confidence. And he talked a big game in terms of what he expects will happen in this fight tonight.
So one thing right away is Sumpter is using a lot of excessive motion. Now, it may not really cost him in a 6-round contest, but you'll notice that whenever he moves away more than he has to. It's not a very efficient style of defense. You see that how he's all the way back to the ropes, and now it just allows Milton. He doesn't really have to do a lot of cutting off because the guy is willing to orbit by virtue of how far he retreats to get out of the way of punches.
Sumpter, born in Brooklyn, New York, fights out of Pittsfield, Mass. Now calls himself the Chin Checker. 4 KOs in 5 fights. Somewhat back up that reputation. Let's see if he can try to put Jeremiah Milton in some type of danger here. It looks like now Milton's got Sumpter cornered. You saw the smile on Sumpter's face before he exited. He's trying to mess with the...
Yeah, this is either going to be a great show by him or when keeping it real goes wrong.
An interesting opening round.
Glove touched the mat, but I think it's from a trip. I'm not sure what happened there. Let's see, yeah,
they're ruling that a slip.
Yeah.
Their feet may have tangled as Sumpter was looking to exit. He does everything very flamboyantly.
Yeah, I gotta say, Sumpter's got a real playful approach to this fight, and it looks to me like Milton is all business.
Sumpter's 34 years old, so he said, look, it's my time. I can't wait anymore. And Sumpter did echo what we thought coming in. This is his toughest challenge as a professional.
10 seconds now. Break it to bell. Break it to bell.
The hype that has followed young Jeremiah Milton.
Would have liked to have seen Milton freeze him a little bit more with feints rather than just waiting for him to move.
Well, if Sumpter continues in this flamboyant, somewhat negative style, Milton may have to find him, may have to chase him a bit, but early on, a clean right-hand counter in round 1, and there you see, when they got tangled, Sumpter was off balance.
You see how much energy that requires to do all of that? It's just, again, in a 6-round contest, does it matter? It's hard to say. But as a general rule, that's just not really efficient resource management.
Sumpter giving up, though, upwards of 25 pounds. And certainly you see the size difference between them. Is he just trying to get in the head of Jeremiah Milton, or is he going to hold the ball 4 corners style and try to muck up this fight? Round 2, 6 rounds scheduled for this preliminary featured bout, heavyweight division.
I will say this, Sumpter's pretty quick. It's pretty quick.
Well, he said his best weapons are his right hand and his movement. And he is able to exit dangerous areas, including when Milton had him cornered midway through the opening round.
There's some feinting there from Milton. I think a little bit more of that might freeze or confuse Sumpter, making him much more of an available target.
Milton fights very upright, a big man style. Very defensively responsible, this Jeremiah Milton. Looked like he grazed Sumpter with that right cross.
They traded hooks there. That could have been bad for both guys.
Let him go. Let him go. Stop. Stop. Let him go. Back up. Back up.
Yeah. Pull it back a little bit. Okay.
Sumpter starting to breathe heavy from the motion that you mentioned he's using in this type of style.
It's just like, it's a lot of work to fight like that.
Sumpter said he grew up in Brooklyn with
nice
former
jab,
world
nice
champion
jab.
Danny Jacobs. Of course, went on to very big things. Sumpter dancing on his toes, trying to hit Milton with a shot he may not see coming. He's often launching these punches from his waist. Anything but a traditional orthodox stance for Quinton Sumpter.
Yeah, I would like to see Milton invest more into the body here. Really slow a guy like Sumpter down. If you can get some decent body work in, and he's no longer able to move with the same kind of, let's say, cavalier attitude, the rest of his punches are going to come to life. Also, looks to me, BC, maybe you disagree, Milton definitely looking to score, little bit more reserved, not trying to make a stupid mistake against a very unorthodox and, frankly, probably for a little bit of him, confusing opponent.
These are the type of difficult, non-traditional opponents that it is important that a young prospect fights on the way up to, you know, learn how to take control of an awkward fight. Good poise at the very least from Milton. He's waiting for Sumpter to come to him. You see that right hand cocked and poised and ready to counter strike. As we count down the final seconds of round 2.
Crowd here getting restless.
Well, they were treated to some action in our first 2 fights. And they don't like the slowness of the heavyweights to start, but Jeremiah Milton has been consistent through 2 rounds in getting off first with the jab and trying his hardest to find the very elusive Quinton Sumpter.
You can see where they traded hooks and then ended up locking arms as a consequence.
Milton does command that center of the ring well.
He does, and here you have Sumpter looking like he's huffing and puffing. I don't know to what extent it will slow him down. Just not a lot of offense from either guy. Not a lot of big connecting, but the jabs in the last round from Milton I thought were pretty nice. But he's not really able to get big power going against a sort of a very confusing opponent here.
Just the 7th pro fight for Jeremiah Milton. We'll see if the crowd's booing has any effect on potentially him putting in a little bit more effort to chase down Sumpter and try to land that big right hand. He's been smart, a little bit safe to start through 2 rounds. This is a very unforgiving crowd tonight at the Desert Diamond Arena.
Looked like that right hand, I couldn't tell how well it went through, but he jabbed off of it and it did make contact. And as you can see, the mouthpiece has come out.
Right hand for Sumpter landed as he came back with the dance.
By the way, he's doing switch step starts as well.
Let's see if this pause for the referee to put the mouthpiece back in the mouth of Sumpter actually hurts him, because he did land a clean right hand on Milton. He seemed to be, for the first time, creating the type of chaos that Quinton Sumpter intended to do from the beginning. Milton had that chance to catch his breath. The tension is high as they paw. And this crowd not about to let them forget what they asked for, and that was sustained 2-way fighting. Now, to be fair, do the boos this hard mirror the fight we're watching? I wouldn't say so.
No, I just think what they're looking at is 2 big heavyweights, and one guy is dancing around and not really able to meaningfully score, and the other guy's having a hard time fighting. It just doesn't make for the most thrilling contest. This is why I think Milton's got to find a way to corral him a little bit more, because he didn't need to at first, but now he kind of does.
He's got to corner him. He's got to cut the ring
off.
off.
He's got to cut the ring off. Body work. I think the jab is nice. His jab is the best thing he's got going.
There are fundamental parts of Milton's game that are on point. He commands the center of the ring. He comes forward. But we'd like to see a little bit more pressure put on. As Sumpter landed the biggest punch of consequence to date, it appeared with that looping right hand earlier.
Yeah, he may have. But now he's fighting in spots. Right? He's not dancing as much. He's standing a little bit more in front of him, shaking it out, and then kind of going and then stopping again.
Quinton Sumpter may have used up a lot of his gas tank in the dance routine he put out there after hitting that big right hand, but he's been quiet offensively since then. That mouthpiece break, it kind of killed the momentum that was building.
A little bit.
Sumpter saw that right counter from Milton coming a mile away and was able to duck to the left. Milton's still a work in progress, trying to set up his power hand.
He's reaching now, leaving his back foot. There's a jab to the body. That's better. More of those. You see that? Sumpter laid on the ropes like he was tired and he was wobbly and then sprinted and blitzed. It's his way of closing the distance.
Sumpter offering trick or treat, but not a lot of substance beyond that one right hand.
That was a nice one.
He caught Milton a second time this round.
Moving into it.
Has Quinton Sumpter found out his adaption, his plan B to circumvent what Jeremiah Milton's trying to do here? It'll be interesting to watch the body language of Milton as we enter that next round. But here's looking back at what we did see in round 3, Luke. Looked like he caught him clean.
Yeah, he did. It's funny, the best work from a boxing perspective has got to be the jabbing right there. You can see a little bit of it from Milton, but it was actually Sumpter catching him with the bigger punches as he moved into it or moved across. So the judging might get a little bit interesting, but I'm also wondering how much Milton kind of is pressing on the brakes here a little bit, knowing this guy might burn himself out. Let's see what happens now that we're in the back half of this fight in round 4.
Well, if you're asking yourself, watching Quinton Sumpter's style, saying, what is he doing? What is he trying to do? That right there, those 2 moments in round 3, those right hands he landed, he's trying to instill doubt in the mind of 6-0 Jeremiah Milton. That what he's doing isn't just crazy, it's crazy with a method here. Can Sumpter be the spoiler against Milton, although they both enter with that unbeaten record?
Yeah, cutting the ring off would be massively beneficial for Milton.
Some stiff jabs,
the jabs
upstairs
are great.
And down to start off for Jeremiah Milton.
He's so off balance, Sumpter.
Sumpter, not the type of style you would enforce in a youth boxing gym.
No, also not a style built for 12 rounds, candidly. Not at heavyweight. Not at heavyweight.
Tonight just scheduled for 6. Sumpter can land a big punch of consequence here and there, as he showed in round 3, but it's going to be tough for him to have a shot at winning this fight over the distance with this little output.
See, the reality is, if you're going to have one of these kinds of styles, they're hard to pull off no matter what. But you kind of tell the crowd, oh, look, I'm going to do razzle-dazzle. But if you're not, oh, there it goes, nice left hook by Sumpter. But in general, if you're not getting the razzle-dazzle off, they get a little bit antsy.
Well, Sumpter's movement has limited the output of Milton. It's just that if the judges are looking for something to capitalize on in a type of round like this one where there really isn't any punches of consequence, you're certainly going to favor the guy who's out there out front with the jab, landing it.
Milton doing a good job of using his left-handed forearm frame when they're in close. I would really like to see him push off with it and get in free body work before the referee can intervene. This is asking a lot, BC, but Errol Spence does that all the time. He'll slide his lead hand in between himself and his opponent, usually on the opponent's collarbone, and then he'll begin to dig as he resets his feet for body work. And the opponent sometimes is caught off guard before the referee intervenes. It's just a good way of setting the tone that everywhere you go, I'm going to be all over you, versus landing in a certain range and then waiting for the referee to intervene.
Another wild combination attempt from Sumpter. It looked like the second punch to the right hand may have partially caught Milton. Not sure that is enough to steal the round late as we close in on 30 seconds to go in round 4.
You hear at the corner of Milton telling him to make him work. Exactly.
Rodney Chrysler, the lead trainer of Jeremiah Milton, has experience in the camp of one Devin Haney. Interesting development there. We saw the big punches from Sumpter in round 3. Round 4, a much slower affair.
He's getting through a little bit. He's getting through a little bit for sure. Let's see here. That missed. All of those missed. And then he eats a left hook as a consequence for being overly committed. That jab. The jab of Milton really has been the very best thing he's got going. Hasn't been able to put combinations behind it, but at a bare minimum able to score pretty consistently with it by itself.
This has been Jeremiah Milton's fight for the totality of it, seemingly outside of those 2 right hands in round 3. The question we have to start asking ourselves, though, as we transfer to the second half of this fight is, are we going to praise Milton for the poise, or maybe criticize a bit for not being active enough here to leave no doubt? When you've got a fighter who's difficult, fighting somewhat of a negative style at times, do you need a statement laid from here from Jeremiah Milton?
I would say something more than what we've gotten thus far. If you really want to impress, if you want people to remember your name, then this has been a commendable effort, but by no means remarkable. Oh, nice right hand.
2-punch combination. Looked like Sumpter was trying to bait him.
Left hook. There
and down goes Curtis Sumpter.
You were just talking about it.
We were waiting for Jeremiah Milton to find his mark. Boy, did he, and that is it.
And Milton taunts him afterwards by doing a bit of the shimmy.
7-0 with 6 knockouts for 28-year-old Jeremiah Milton. We just said he's been poised and maybe a little bit too cautious, but Luke Thomas, when Jeremiah Milton found that opening, Dreamland was the result.
Big power on that kid. By the way, I'll say this. Couldn't quite get his offense going as early as we would have liked. But I gotta say, on the other side of things, I appreciate Milton's patience at the same time. He didn't rush into anything. He got caught a couple of times with the trickery of Sumpter. Let's see how he did it here.
Round 5, that left hook seemed to be the big one.
Oh, man.
Sumpter had been clowning him in the 2-way action we saw in the seconds leading up to that. But to Milton's credit, he walked him down, landed that big left hook, and then it was just set up for the finish.
That was nice. He went down to the body first, then upstairs. It catches Sumpter, and from there he unloads a flurry from which he could not recover. Body work, BC, body work. I've been saying it since the first round. It will do so much for you. And a guy like Milton is very smart. His corner is very smart. I have to say, I would love to see him again, be able to get a little bit more going a little bit quicker. But this was a tricky opponent. He's still very junior in his career, relatively speaking. You got to take the good parts where they exist. I appreciate the power, I appreciate the jab, and I appreciate his patience.
And now that we see that finish, you do, like you said, appreciate that patience of how he built to that knockout. Didn't let the craziness of Quentin Sumpter's style
or the booing
or risk-taking or the booing get in his way. And for Sumpter, if you're going to dance and act like you're hurt, it's going to be hard for the referee maybe to figure out if you really are when you seem like you're hurt.
Right,
and that's why that's a good stoppage. Let's go to the final result.
39 seconds of round number 5. Referee Wes Milton calls the halt to the bout. Your winner by way of TKO and still undefeated from Las Vegas, Nevada, Jeremiah Dreamland Milton.
a 5th round stoppage for unbeaten 28-year-old Jeremiah Milton, Tulsa, Oklahoma born, fighting out of Las Vegas. He's still got some work to do, as we indicated, but you're talking about somebody to put on your heavyweight radar, maybe a little bit more longer term. He's up and coming.
Yeah, I don't know if 2023 is going to be his year, but after that, you might want to start seeing exactly where he's going to be. Very talented. We've talked to him, BC. You see him fight here.
He's
very
impressive
guy, smart guy, thoughtful guy, and he's really trying to do something the right way. Again, took him a little bit to get going, but you admire the patience and you admire the firepower he was able to bring when he had the opportunity.
Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell back with you. The conclusion of our 3-fight preliminary countdown card is now behind us, pushing forward to the start at the top of the hour of our Showtime pay-per-view main offering. 5 fights beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Jake Paul and Anderson Silva in that main event, which we are going to add to our build up to that in a second. But for Jeremiah Milton right there, certain tests you have to pass early sometimes more involve your poise and your reaction to things. When he got hit with those right hands in round 3, we could have saw some bad reaction. We didn't. Stayed calm, stayed true. That's something to really build off of.
Yeah, like what would have been the very best scenario? The very best scenario for Milton, anyway, would have been him figuring out a very tricky opponent within a couple of rounds and putting him away. But listen, that's not always going to be available to you. We're talking about a guy who's still very much, he's on the preliminary card. He's still working out the kinks in his game and trying to get better, and he has a lot of promise. So what he did do was the next best thing, BC, which was to employ patience, use combinations, his power, his timing, and frankly, some of the defensive vulnerabilities his opponent gave him. Use what your opponent gives you. He did in this case, and as we indicated, didn't bow to the boos. Didn't seem like he got away from his game plan either. Just took a little bit more time to get it going, but in the end, he gets a stoppage inside the distance. Not sure what more you could ask for, given how good that all ended up being.
You can ask for more entertainment tonight, and you're certainly about to get that in tonight's main offering, Showtime pay-per-view. Jake Paul's MVP Promotions presenting the 6 Pro fight for the 25-year-old social media sensation, influencer, agitator, serial risk taker. You can give him a lot of names. It's going to have to be a serious pro boxer tonight when he welcomes Anderson Silva. But Luke, when we look ahead to this main event and when we're talking about the advantages that Jake Paul does bring in, youth, size, he's a big kid, 6'2", had to cut down to the 187-pound limit. But Jake Paul's got real pop. We had George St. Pierre on our post-weigh-in show just yesterday. He named Jake Paul's right hand the same right that he curled in there, according to GSP, to finish Tyron Woodley, as you see right now in their rematch late last year. It's a punch that's a little bit well hidden, loops over the top right onto the target. We're not asking Jake Paul to fight a world champion yet, but on this level, he's a legitimate puncher.
Yeah, he can thump a little bit. I think that's right. And again, people are kind of losing sight and saying, oh, well, what he's got is big power. In that particular punch, he had big power. I've been covering MMA for a long time. I was there that night. I remember very distinctly when Nate Marquardt put out the lights of Tyron Woodley, but that was a very different circumstance in MMA. It was up against a cage line fence, and it was up against, well, actually the elbows of Marquardt. This was a different scenario. So to put Woodley out with one punch like that obviously means you've got some good power. Fair enough. But the better story there to me for Jake is that there were some bad habits he was showing at that stage of the rematch, but he got away from them and got back to the good habits. And because he had invested, one of the things that you see from Jake on tape, but again, an hour-long tape study I did. Come on, folks, I've been looking at it. What you begin to see is that for Jake, he makes good defensive reads. He'll throw something, and he'll do 2 things. One, he'll wait to see how you react to it, and then, of course, go in the other direction. You saw Tyron Woodley throwing his hand up here and was using the lead hand to parry and block. He was doing it all the time. So Jake made him do it again and then paid for it. That's one big thing that he does. The other one, of course, as I mentioned before, BC, is body work just in general.
Yes.
And he'll change the rhythm up, too. He'll touch, and then do a multi-punch combination off into the body with maybe one on top to the head. But he invests in that. Against a guy like Anderson Silva, at 47 years of age, I don't care how good of shape you are at 47, you're going to have some vulnerabilities, perhaps to the chin, but certainly to the body as well. Jake already likes body work. It will be helpful in this contest. You mentioned he can pop. I'm telling you, in certain cases, he can make defensive reads. That all should make for an interesting mix on here tonight.
And we know Anderson Silva has always had knockout power in any combat discipline. He showed that in that knockout last year of retired MMA legend Tito Ortiz. Maybe Ortiz, physically, style-wise, not the perfect opponent to gauge how it'll look against Jake Paul. But then you look back at the upset victory Anderson Silva had over Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., a former middleweight title holder. That shows you that he can do some things. So I thought one of our colleagues in the MMA space, Danny Segura of MMA Junkie, really set it up nicely when talking about this matchup, saying, what has Jake shown us through 5 fights? That he's a fighter. He's a real fighter. He'll stand in there. He'll take punishment. He'll deliver back. On the level of competition that he's faced, he's proven that he belongs here at the very least. But Anderson Silva's a boxer. That's got to play into this more. He has real adaptive boxing skills from where he comes from in MMA. He started his pro boxing career, which is now at 3-1, back in the 1990s. Up to this point, has Jake Paul fought anybody with the traditional, separate from what Anderson Silva can do in the shots you don't see coming, in the creativity, in the just foundational aspects of his game? This is also the toughest boxing challenge Jake Paul has faced.
Yeah, again, it's not a traditional boxer, so it makes for some deep uncertainty, I think, no matter who you talk to here in Phoenix, Arizona. But at the same time, name for me the opponent prior to tonight that Jake Paul has faced that can make between round or even middle of the round adaptations. Now, Tyron Woodley was one of the very best welterweight champions the UFC's ever had. But I think by the time he got to Jake's orbit, and again, boxing was never his strong suit, he was much more rigidly adhering to a game plan, which of course I'm sure Silva will have a game plan as well. But if it doesn't go right, Silva can go in a lot of different directions. He is one of the more creative strikers. And again, while this is all new for both Jake Paul and Anderson Silva, these heights in boxing, competitively, this is not new for Anderson Silva. Folks, let's make no mistake about it. Tonight is the biggest night of Jake Paul's competitive fighting life. It is not the biggest competitive night for Anderson Silva. He has seen so many different opponents, so many different kinds of scenarios. He's been the villain, he's been the hero, he's been hurt, he's been the guy who leads, he's been the taller fighter, shorter fighter, you name it. He has seen all of these different scenarios. So if something's not going right early in the fight, and by the way, I expect Jake to have a strong start here, that doesn't really matter. What matters is that if this fight, BC, gets past the 4th round, to me, it becomes a secondary, brand new fight all by itself. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where Jake Paul, to me, is going to have to win. When Anderson Silva begins to figure you out, because he will, now what do you have for him? That's what I want to see.
In combat sports, traditionally, historically, we feed our old to our young. Does Jake Paul have next in that regard? And can he secure the kind of victory that could bring on even bigger names? Nate Diaz will be in the building tonight. George St. Pierre will be on the announce desk tonight on Showtime pay-per-view. So much at stake. The combat sports world is tuning in and is taking notice ahead of this week. And you can tune in just tonight, top of the hour, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. You can order the pay-per-view right now. Paul versus Silva. Head on over to Showtime.com/PPV. Get it ahead of time. Get ready. Buckle up. A 5-fight main card. But Paul Silva at the top. But we talked about it earlier. Le'Veon Bell versus Uriah Hall. Dr. Mike Varshavsky, the social media influencer, versus MMA veteran Chris Avila. And look quickly on this co-main event. Let's not forget Ashton Silva. He's just 18 years old. He's an up-and-coming boxing lightweight. 7-0 with 7 KOs, taking on a gritty veteran in Braulio Rodriguez, a veteran of more than 25 fights. But Luke, this kid, 18-year-old Ashton Silva, turned pro at 16 and went to Mexico instead of the amateur Olympic route. He does seem to be something special.
He is trying to do the Devin Haney route. Now, that's a difficult road to walk, to be very clear here. And I'm not saying, for people who might be listening, that now Ashton Silva is the next Devin Haney. That is not my point. He has an enormously long way to go before he can claim something like that. However, he is trying to follow that kind of a path in whatever part of the journey he is in. not really doing, as you indicated, the traditional amateur style of boxing and the routes and the organizations and the tournaments they're in, and instead going down to Mexico, fighting other ostensibly grown men at a very young age, having success, and now coming back to Los Estados Unidos to see what he can do here. It's a big card. Obviously, MVP has big belief in him, and he's got an opponent, BC, who is not wet behind the ears. This dude has been in big fights before. Again, it might be the biggest fight of Ashton Silva's life. I don't know necessarily if it's the biggest one of Rodriguez, although it could be. But point being is the amount of different looks Rodriguez has seen is going to mean Silva has his work cut out for him tonight.
Let's see if Ashton Silva can take a big step forward. A prized young prospect signed with Jake Paul's MVP Promotions. But something for everybody seemingly on tonight's 5-fight main pay-per-view card. Showtime pay-per-view, you're home for it. And a reminder, I'm Brian Campbell, this is Luke Thomas. We are co-hosts of Showtime Sports, Combat Sports award-winning digital series, Morning Combat. You can catch us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern on YouTube. The channel is called Morning Combat. And if you want a little bit more tonight after the conclusion of the Jake Paul Anderson Silva pay-per-view card, head on over to the Morning Combat channel. It's youtube.com/Morning Combat. You can catch Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell with the post-fight instant analysis, breaking down all that what took place tonight inside the Desert Diamond Arena behind us. Luke Thomas, final thoughts ahead of tonight's main event, Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva.
I'll give you my prediction as for whatever it's worth. And again, I want to be very clear. We've been saying it all night. I'm going to repeat it for as much time as we have left in the broadcast. Nobody really knows what's going to happen here. If you talk to anyone inside the boxing world, they think Jake's going to win. You talk to the people in MMA, they think Anderson's going to win. If the fight ends before the 5th round, I think Jake gets his hand raised. He'll have done it with big power. If it goes past the 4th round, I think Anderson Silva is going to, what do you want to say, BC? Warm the hearts of angry MMA fans everywhere and have another great highlight reel in his whole career.
Will we get another viral moment, another GIF, or is it GIF, that dominates the internet from tonight's main event? There's only one way to find out. Showtime.com/PPV. Top of the hour, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. It's Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva. For our great staff, for Luke Thomas, my name is Brian Campbell. Enjoy the fights this evening from the Valley of the Sun, Glendale, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the Desert Diamond Arena in Glendale, Arizona. And at this time, we present our weigh-in for our big night of action. Dr. Mike Warshawski, 182.5 pounds. And Chris Avila weighs in at 183.25 pounds.
I'm used to saving lives, and now I have to do damage inside that ring.
He acting nice, but he ain't nice. He's trying to fuck me up tomorrow. Fuck this little bitch. He's a bitch.
He's an NFL great, Le'Veon Bell, 197.5. Uriah Hall weighs in at 198.5. Antonio Nieves, 117.75 pounds. Alejandro Santiago weighs in at 118 pounds. And Braulio Rodriguez weighs in at 132.5 pounds. And Ashton H.D.O. Silva weighs in at 132.5 pounds.
Hard work makes easy work. Now it's time for the easy work.
It's the bout you've all been waiting for, the main event. Here's the MMA legend, Anderson Silva, 186 pounds. Here is the renowned content creator, the popular social media superstar, and serial risk-taker, Jake Paul. 186.5 pounds for Jake Paul.
Tomorrow, I go doing my best for make a good show for everyone.
It's my generation. It's my time. It's been nice, nice, nice. It's been sweet, sweet, sweet. And tomorrow, guess what, Ariel? I'm fucking him up. I'm fucking him up.
George, what a scene up there.
A lot of spectacular thing happening in that ring.